You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do. Hello, People-Centric Leaders. It is Bethany Taft today, and I have Diana Royalty and Stephanie Anderson, and we have a topic for you. Yeah, Stephanie, do you want to say something?
I was just going to say hi.
Oh,
It's great.
hey.
It's great to be here with you all.
So good to be with you too. Diana, would you like to say something too? Hello.
This is my favorite group of podcasters.
Oh
I love
my
it when the three of us
God.
get together. We have so much fun. We have great things to talk about. I don't know. It's my favorite hour here.
I do like it too. We can talk about literally anything with
I
this,
think we could. Yeah.
but our podcast is about business and leadership and engagement. And sometimes we could probably start a podcast about so many other things. Right before this, we're just talking about social media, and it is a new year. And so some of you maybe are taking a break from social media. And if you are, good for you. And also, we would love to know what you're doing to stay on track. So I know people have different strategies. Is it just, deleting your apps? Is it getting a brick situation where it's locking you out of things? Is it, your timer on your phone? I want to know what people's strategies are for this. So share with us. We want to know.
This is our subtopic. We need
That's
to
the
know,
subtopic.
what discipline exists that, I don't have. How are you all doing this?
Less
Yep.
scrolling for this year would be good for me, but I haven't done anything to support that yet. Okay, to the real topic. So our real topic for today is something that I like to call the boss costume. It's a very technical term, the boss costume. If you look it up in the dictionary, you will not find it. But another word that is real and you can find in the dictionary is called posturing. That's another word that I closely have sort of linked with this idea of the boss costume. And so I'll just kind of introduce what I mean, what I mean when I say the boss costume. A lot of times when we work with organizations, we work with leaders, whether within their whole organization or in coaching relationships, sometimes we see leaders who, for a variety of reasons, put on this costume, so to speak, because this is what they think it means to be the boss or the leader. And so they kind of act in a way that's probably not authentic to who they actually are. It's just how they show up at work when they're leading their teams. And so I like to call it the boss costume. So if we're talking about it within posturing, maybe I'd love to hear from both of you all of what do we mean by posturing in leadership? Like, can you add to what I just shared when I explained the boss costume?
Yeah. So I think I have an example and you can help me round out if this is good or not. But I worked for a woman who was in social settings, a fun, loving, warm, engaging human. And I really enjoyed her outside of work. But when she became my boss, she felt like she had to do this thing where she was dominant and she just completely shifted who she was. Instead of this fun loving, spirited, warm person, she turned into this very demanding, pretty demeaning, talk down to you, very high standards in not a healthy way type person. And it was just very dichotomous from who I know she actually was. But it felt like she felt like that's a
Yeah.
crazy
Ooh,
conversation. To me, it felt like she almost felt like she had to do this to be the boss, right? To assert her authority in this situation and to move things forward and get things done. This is how she chose to show up as the boss.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think that's what I've seen too, where it's a leader who, yeah, it's just they put on this this like attitude of like, I'm just going to be super direct because, and this is just an example, it's not every time, but it's like maybe I've got to be super, super direct, but it just like makes me sound like egotistical or a jerk or whatever. Like it's just very cold interactions. Or it kind of like it's like a power trip, like it puts people in their place or something like that. Or they are really, they take up the room, they take up space in the room, but like their follow through is really bad or something like that. But when they're in the room with you, like they make a big presence, right? So I guess one question though that flows out of that is like, how is posturing different from like confidence, authority, or decisiveness? Because I think we're kind of we both, Diana, like use some of those words to describe how they were acting. So how is posturing different than those?
I mean, I would maybe say the posturing, it is the acting part versus the reality part of it. And what I mean by that is like, you're not actually acting in authority, you're pretending like you have this influence or authority that maybe you don't, or that you don't normally flex. And I think, like what Diana was saying, I've seen that in leaders too, where like normally they're this very even keeled person, and then something happens and it is literally like they reach into the box and they put on the hat and they're like, all right, like no more Mr. Mrs. Nice Guy. We're gonna crack down. And like people in the room are either freaked out or kind of want to giggle because it just is so obvious, like posturing, and it's not always believable too, versus like real authority doesn't mean you have to be authoritarian, you have to be super dominant, but it means that you are projecting confidence. You have a healthy like influence on your team in their decision making processes. And so I think, the posturing really is the acting. It's like when you feel as a leader, if you're trying to fake it till you make it, then you might be posturing sometimes accidentally. And like fake it till you make it is a really bad strategy. And it's something that I think has become so popular to say because we are all just figuring it out. Like no one has all of this figured out. No one woke up with all of the skills to be a great leader. One day we're all learning. But if it feels like you're kind of just like faking your way through a lot, then you might be putting on this costume of like, this is the boss I think I should be, or my team expects me to be, or maybe leaders above me, if there's board or shareholders or a CEO, that I have to be this because they want me to have these results. I think we see leaders do that a lot, and they're not really being genuine to like what their role requires or who they are as a person because they feel like they need to be something else, or they convince themselves that like I'm not going to get results from my team unless I drive things this way because I've seen another leader drive things that way and have success.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. And that's what I kind of wanted to ask. And so drawing that out of like what usually drives leaders to put on this costume. And I think that you of like what they think a leader should look like. And so what you have mentioned is like there are several things of like maybe what's been modeled to them. What kind of pressures do they have above them? So are there other like whether it's their boss or a board or whatever that sort of is making them just that is putting pressure on them within their role. Is there anything else that you guys would add of like why do leaders usually get to that point? What's driving that behavior?
I think I think there is like in the experience that I had, it was a male dominated field. And I think it was just this like perception of this is how I have to do it
Mm-hmm.
to be like everybody else, but better. I don't know. It was like a weird, I have to be the biggest one in the room, whether they did or not. I don't think they did, but it was that like social pressure almost of I need to just be the biggest in the room. So they had social pressure, they had, boss pressure, they had this like high skill and expertise knowledge that they wanted to make sure everyone knew that they had. And so there was like ego there. I mean, I also will say I've rarely seen it go the other direction where the posturing is like, no, I'm just really sweet and kind and loving and empathetic, right? The posturing is usually like this harsh
Yeah.
caricature of a
Demanding.
boss,
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say the other one is more uncommon, but I will say I have seen it before, where maybe we've been in a meeting as the consultant and the leader is like, we are doing this, 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 and this, and I'm not going to back down from it. And they really seem to like draw a line and they're like, okay, great, let's go have that meeting with the team and like tell them what you expect. And then they get in there and their communication not only really softens, but then they don't really say what they were supposed to say because then I think, again, both ways it's ego of like, well, I don't want to be perceived as this like jerk a-hole who's coming in and laying down the law for everybody. So instead of talking about responsibility and jobs and tasks and who's going to do things, I'm going to like give a metaphor for like a tree with roots and branches, or I'm just going to give this like inspirational speech. And they really back off. And so they put on a different boss costume, right? It's not the authoritarian boss. It's like the cheerleader visionary boss that I'm just going to be here. I'm just going to paint a beautiful picture. But really, it's because I feel like I can't say exactly what I need from you. So I think, yeah, ego definitely gets in the way. And I think sometimes the other boss pressure is a big impact. Like I can think back in my own career one time, I was leading a big effort at our company. We were about to have a meeting where like everybody on the staff was going to be there. I was going to lay out, here's what everybody needs to be doing for this campaign, blah, 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 blah. And before that meeting, my boss pulled me aside and essentially told me like, you need to get these hooligans together. They need to be on track. They need to understand how important this is and that, they can't show up to this event and just lollygag and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, okay. So I put on my boss costume and I showed up very authoritarian in that meeting, which is a little bit of my natural if we're honest, but it was like really dialed up. And I was telling people, like, if you don't feel like you can do XYZ at this event, then I'd rather you just not come and just take your name off the list and blah, 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 blah. And then I got done and my boss pulled me aside again and she was like, what the heck is wrong with you? Like, why were you so mean to everyone? And that was uncalled for. And like, I kind of got in trouble
like, this
for
is
it.
your fault.
And that was my thought exactly. I was like, you told me to like go in and lay down the law. And then when it hurt everyone's feelings, then you were mad at me for it, boss. Like,
Oh,
what do
that's
you
so
mean?
funny.
What do you mean? And so I think sometimes there is that pressure. And if we could go back and dissect that 100 ways, I think I was still a little right? Like my boss did tell me to do something and I did it. But I think if we probably really could dissect it, there's a lot of reasons there why it happened that way, like why she said that to me, why I did what I did. But I think it really is that posturing of like you have to show up really strong as a leader. And leaders who talk this way and do these things are the ones that get stuff done and accomplish things. Like,
As you were talking, I thought about a leader that also, like the posturing, they just use a ton of jargon all the time. Like, and I have literally looked at this person and been like, I don't understand what you're talking
yeah,
about.
like yuck.
But I can do that because I'm the consultant, and like their people can't do that. They just have to be like, yes, sir, I understand what you're saying completely. When they don't understand, and I
That
have
sounds
called
very
this person,
important.
what?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they leave and they're like, yes, that sounds very important. And then they have to go ask somebody else, like, what are they talking about?
And one time I
What's
asked this
that?
leader, I was like, you're using just like a lot of jargon, and I think your team's getting lost. And he literally said to me, there is such thing as a dictionary.
Oh, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, well, there is, but if I looked up all of those words and put them together in the way that you're using them, it's gibberish. Like,
This
maybe.
Yeah.
is why The Office had such good content as a show, because isn't there that episode where like Jim has to make some type of report and the boss just keeps using, I can't
A
think of the word,
rundown.
a
Give me a
rundown.
rundown.
You
Give
got to
me
put
the
together the
rundown.
Oh, a
rundown.
random. That's a
Yeah,
great example.
it's a
It's
great
so funny.
example. But I think sometimes leaders try to talk above, like the part of the posturing is like talking above
Yeah.
their people's heads to just like confuse and distract. I don't understand that.
Well, yeah, to distract. I think that's a big part of posturing is like it's like a distraction mechanism in some ways because and I think some of it goes back to not all the time, but the like imposter syndrome idea. And sometimes like it is an actual lack of knowledge or experience that causes people to do that. Like
Yeah,
you
that's right.
literally don't have that experience or whatever, and you know it. And so you feel like you have to sort of like distract by changing your behavior instead of being vulnerable to say like, hey, I don't actually I've actually never done that before, and that's okay, let me help learn that, or like let me get to this, let me ask some questions, or let me dive into something new that maybe I don't know, or I've not had the knowledge or experience. So I think that's one part of it, and then sometimes it is right, that imposter syndrome where it's like you literally do have the knowledge and experience, but you feel like you don't. It's like this different perception, and so you feel like you have to posture when it's like, why? You don't need to do that. You know how to do this job, or you know how to talk to people because you do it outside of your role, in regular neutral situations, right? So those are really good examples of what that looks like. And then I guess like another question here as we go, we'll just do a few more questions, is like how does this impact teams too whenever the leader is posturing or putting on their boss costume? Is how is this impacting teams from what we've seen?
So I'll give another example of not a leader, but a teacher that I had. I had this choir teacher who was like so fun, just a fun teacher. He let us do whatever we wanted. We were high schoolers, so like he let us do what we wanted to do. And then every once in a while, he would be like, we got to do work. We got to actually work in this class. And it was so whiplashy, and as someone who really likes to know what's going to happen, I'm a planner, I'm type A, I like an agenda. I liked knowing what was going to happen from him and when it was going to happen and how that, loose agenda worked. And then when he was like, not that person and turned into a different person, it made me not like him because I was like, you're disingenuous and you honestly scare me because you have two faces. And I think now I was in high school. I didn't know how to handle that. It was, I still was like, oh, you're still a great teacher and I love you. Right. Like, but I remember the feeling of just, you have two faces and I don't know what I'm going to get from you at any given moment. And I feel like when that happens at work with a leader, people are still doing that. They're doing the like, who are you today? And how do I need to act for you today? And how do I need to engage with you today? Instead of what work needs done, how are we going to do it? And how are we going to do it together? It's how do I best handle you and who you're going to be today? And I think there's a lot of energy and effort put into that instead of the work that's actually being done.
Yeah, I totally agree. It creates such a lack of stability for your team because they never know who they're going to encounter today, and they never know what your reaction is going to be to something that they do or a piece of work that they put out. And so it makes everybody start walking on eggshells a little bit, maybe without even realizing it. It makes everybody on the team more cautious because we're not sure. We have no idea what reaction to expect from you. And we have no idea probably like when that hammer is gonna fall. Like you were saying in your story, Diana, like just one day it was totally different. And so we start becoming like self-conscious about that and afraid of that happening. And, the real cost to that, besides just like the emotional cost and emotional damage that causes for your team, is you start losing trust. in your leader and each other. So that means like probably if you're a high performer, you're just starting to hide work from them because you don't want them involved in the things you're doing because they might jump in and throw everything off or mess up all of your plans or really set back progress. And then I think for the whole team, you probably are just accomplishing a little less. In general, you're not coming up with as many new ideas or innovations because it no longer feels like safe to do that on the team, which I guess as I'm saying this out loud too, really starts leading to like a little bit of lack of psychological safety with the group, which we know, I mean, all of the research points to that being really, really paramount for any winning team. They have to have psychological safety. And if you don't have that, and we can't give each other feedback and we never know what today's going to look like or what costume you're putting on and then what costume I'm going to put on to try to respond to you, like we're just not going to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it impacts our performance, then it also impacts our engagement, right? Like it's all so cyclical, and feeds into each other. And so, yeah, it's a major impact for your team. So if you think it's helping, maybe short term, maybe today, maybe you felt good because you walked into the room and people like listened to what you had to say, and maybe they like submitted a task more quickly because you were just like really direct with them. We're not saying directness is bad or confidence or authority or any of that stuff. Really, we're just saying when it's inauthentic and there's no trust built, then it's not effective long term as a long term strategy. And we don't probably have time to like dive into this, but also impacts you individually as a leader and can wear on you, and how you show up to work every day. And it's just not sustainable for you as a leader, too. So I wonder, as we kind of like, as we start to round this out, I'd love to talk about like how can leaders move from looking like a leader to actually being one?
Such a good question. And I will say that, like, all of the studies, if you talk about what a good leader is, or if you ask your team, what's a good leader? Who's the best leader you've ever had? The word authenticity shows up time and time again. And I think that when we are our authentic selves, people see that and they know that and they respect that. And then you know what you're getting out of a person, right? I will also admit to, like, in my 20s and early 30s, I was very much like, no, I must put the hammer down, right? And my natural tendency is a little more direct than most people. My natural tendency is a little more blunt than most people. I bet I'm on the spectrum in that. Like, I know I am. I bet I am. Like, I have sociopathic tendencies for sure.
Oh my gosh, you
I
do
do.
not.
I do. But all that to say, I think when I finally figured out how to balance my actual empathy and my actual authoritarian nature, that sounds worse than it actually is. But like when I learned to balance those two things and actually show both sides of that, like I absolutely understand the empathy and also here's what I need. I think that's when I started to turn into a better version of a leader, right? When I was no longer hiding the softness or hiding the understanding and dialing up the authority. I think it that is when I became a leader that I'm proud to be. That was the turning point of like, oh, okay, you can get results and love on people. You can hear what's going on in their world and also still get profitability. You know, like it was not a this or that, it became and every time I do an and in leadership, it feels better and I get better and I do better and people like it better. And so I think it's the authenticity and then never a but or never a this and that. It's an and.
Yeah, I love that you like tied that to empathy too, because something I was thinking is like it's sometimes that leaders are honestly afraid to like express real emotion related to something that like I have to show up as strong which means that I never express when I'm disappointed. I never express when I'm upset about something. And so then you just become the boss that's like really hard to read. And again, we don't know what to expect from you. And I agree with that and love how you frame that, Diana, of like the and of like you can be super disappointed in how something turned out or frustrated with something your team did or like upset at the result and take that to your team and like have an honest conversation about it. Like instead of putting on the boss costume and being super authoritarian and just saying, do better, get better, it has to be better. Like, what if you walked into the room and you're like, team, I'm just going to be honest. Like, I'm super disappointed with how we handled this. And like, I do appreciate that, like, we got to a solution eventually. But when I look at the process and how we did this and how much time it took and how many people it involved and the ways we had to go back and around and the impact that that had on our customer, I'm super disappointed because I know we're all really smart. I know we're all great. We're all qualified to be here. And so like I want to actually talk about like how do we do better? And I think that type of conversation a lot of leaders are scared to have because it means they have to practice the and they have to express real emotion and they have to have true empathy for their team and see them as human beings just as much as they are.
Yeah, it's the you're a leader and you're also a human. So you're allowed to have bad days. You're allowed to be disappointed. You're allowed to have big emotions. Like, but how you do that well and how you do that in front of your team and how you lead through that is the message here.
Yeah, this is great. I love all of your thoughts. And I feel like there could be a lot more that
So
we
much
dive
more.
into in terms of like how to help individual leaders like really think through this. But I think it's an important topic because we see it impact teams, yes, but we also see how it impacts leaders individually because it feels like you're putting extra pressure on yourself and you don't have to have all the answers and you don't have to figure out. And I get that sometimes there are the organizations that you're in might be perpetuating it, right? Like it might feel like well, if I don't show up, like this is how leaders at this organization show up, if that makes sense. Of like, this is
Yeah.
the precedent that's been set. This is the culture that we have here. If I don't do that, then I don't look like I'm doing my job, right? Which is a challenge. Like that's a challenging dynamic. But I think one thing that I would encourage you to do is to have a good understanding of what are your strengths, whether that's you just taking inventory of like what are your unique strengths or doing something more, intentional, like taking a strengths finder or something like that. Or maybe it's having a conversation with somebody who knows you really, really well outside of a work setting and having them help reflect back, like what are the strengths that you have as a human? And then how can you leverage those uniquely within your role as a leader, so that you can recognize and understand that like the way that you lead doesn't have to look like your boss's or your boss's boss. It can look so different because you're not the same person as they are. And so that would be part of my encouragement. But for you to also then ask yourself the question as a leader, and this could be for anybody within an organization, not just somebody who literally has authority. You've heard us talk about that before. But the question of like, what would change if I led with honesty rather than image? If I led with honesty rather than feeling like I have to put on my boss costume today, and think about like how do you want to show up more authentically with your team? And even like what's the worst case scenario? What if you took off your boss costume for a day? What would happen?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I love
Anything
I
else?
love that. No, I love how you tied it to like this isn't just for leaders with the title. This is for leading others. This is for everyone to use in their position because you can't not lead, right? We say that like you cannot lead. And so if you have not thought about the costumes that you're putting on, think about them and take them off. Don't wear a costume. Be you.
You costumes are for Halloween.
Costumes are for Halloween. So fun at Halloween.
I was trying to figure out a way to make that
I
all.
know. If Philip were here, he would have like the perfect
Yeah, like
analogy and metaphor. And that's not us, Bethany. It's
I don't
fine.
have it today, but there's probably something there.
There's something
We'll
there.
get back to you. We'll get back to you. All right. Thanks for your time today, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.